Welcome back to Films Recapped. Today I will show you a historical drama film from 2015, called Bridge of Spies. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and enjoy. The year is 1957, and the United States is in the height of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Both sides of this conflict employ spies to learn about the other's nuclear capabilities. One of these spies, a Soviet man named Rudolf Abel, is arrested while operating in Brooklyn. Obviously, this man does not know any lawyers in the US, and so is assigned someone to defend him. After all, the Americans don't want to make it look like they throw people in jail without a fair trial, not even enemy spies. The man that the New York bar chooses to defend Abel is an insurance lawyer named James Donovan. Donovan is obviously conflicted about taking on this case. On the one hand, he believes that every person has a right to a fair and honest trial. On the other hand, he's concerned about the retaliation that the American public might make against him and his family for defending someone like Abel. In the end, the choice is obvious for Donovan, and he agrees to take Abel on as a client. Even from their very first meeting, Donovan collects as much information as he can from Abel. Despite knowing that this is a losing case, Donovan still wants to give the best defense that he possibly can. He doesn't just ask Abel about his actions, but also about the actions of the American agents that captured him. Donovan also takes it upon himself to be honest with the man and to try to get him to trust him. Donovan even goes so far in his attempt to give Abel a fair trial that he asks the judge presiding over the case for an extension. This is, of course, denied. On his way home from this meeting, Donovan is followed by a CIA agent. The two talk and the agent asks questions about what Abel has told Donovan. Donovan chooses to respect his client's confidentiality and refuses to tell the man anything. This of course doesn't make the agent very happy, and he subtly threatens Donovan. Still though, he sticks to his convictions. Around this same time, a group of 4 young American military men undergo a series of tests in an unremarkable hotel in an undisclosed location. Once they finish and pass the tests, they are informed about what it is they are doing, interviewing to work for the CIA. The final step in the process was to undergo a lie detector test, which they all passed. One of these young men is Gary Powers, formerly a pilot in the Air Force, now a pilot for the CIA. This group is shown the new aircraft that they will be piloting, the U-2 spy plane with 3 massively powerful cameras attached to it. They are to fly over Soviet territory at 70,000 feet and take photographs. They go through extensive training and are told that under no circumstances should the Soviets get their hands on either the planes or pilots. With this, the pilots are off to the other side of the world. The day of Abel's trial finally arrives, and Donovan makes one last attempt to give him a truly fair trial. It turns out that the agents who captured Abel did not have a search warrant, yet they performed a thorough search of Abel's rooms. Because of the lack of warrant, any evidence collected should have been inadmissible in court. However, the judge decides to allow it. To no one's surprise, but Donovan's disappointment, Abel is found guilty on all charges and is sentenced to death. However, Donovan manages to convince the judge that Abel might have used to the United States government if he is left alive. He argues that the CIA has plenty of operatives in the Soviet Union. If one were to be captured, it would be beneficial to have a captive of our own to possibly trade. The judge agrees with this and gives the man 30 years in prison. Still not happy with the way the prosecution went about building their case, Donovan appeals the conviction all the way up to the Supreme Court. This leads to Donovan and his family to be harassed, threatened, and attacked. One displeased person even shoots into their home. The stress is clearly starting to get to the Donovan family, and he wonders if doing the right thing is worth the risk to his family. Despite all this risk to himself and his family, Donovan is not able to sway the Supreme Court, and the New York conviction is upheld. During the young Gary Powers' first flight over the USSR in his U-2 plane, he is shot down. Unfortunately, he is unable to hit the self-destruct and fully destroy the plane before it falls over the Soviet Union. He parachutes to the ground where he is captured. His captors put him on a fake trial, where his sentence was always going to be 10 years of confinement, including 3 years in prison. Back in New York, Donovan is being edged out of his law firm by the other partners because of his actions during the Abel case. He then receives a letter from East Germany that was allegedly sent by Mr. Abel's wife. She thanks him for his service to her husband and urges him to get in contact with Vogel, her lawyer. However, after taking the letter to Mr. Abel, he is sure it isn't from the man's wife. The CIA believes that the letter is some informal way of the USSR hinting that they are willing to trade Abel for the recently captured Powers. The CIA then all but order Donovan to fly to Berlin to act as negotiator. He's a private citizen, and so his going won't be seen as an official visit from a US official. Donovan arrives just in time to see the Berlin Wall go up, along with the complications that brings. However, because he's an American citizen and not an American official, he is able to cross into East Berlin with minimal problems, though he does lose his coat along the way to a gang of young men. Finally, Donovan arrives at the Soviet embassy in East Berlin and meets with a KGB officer in Abel's family before being directed to Vogel. Vogel, as it turns out, represents the Attorney General of East Germany. The AG wants to trade Abel for a young American graduate student who was captured in East Berlin. The CIA warned Donovan that the Soviets would likely do this instead of offering to trade powers. They gave him clear instructions if this did happen. The student, Frederick Pryor, was not as concerned. He needs to focus on negotiating for powers. Donovan, though, goes rogue and asks for both Powers and Pryor. He tells the Attorney General that the Soviets can release both Powers and Pryor or there will be no deal at all. Of course, he doesn't have the power to make that call, but the Soviets and Germans don't know that. Through some clever negotiating, Donovan arranges for Powers and Abel to be traded at the Glienicke Bridge, with Pryor being released at the same time at Checkpoint Charlie. Things are tense as the Germans fail to bring Pryor around at the designated time. The CIA is still most concerned about getting Powers back and tells Abel that he can go since they got the man they really want. However, Abel refuses to go with the Soviets until Pryor arrives at Checkpoint Charlie. Thankfully for everyone involved, he does arrive shortly after the exchange was supposed to happen, and all three men are returned to their respective leaders. The next day, Donovan, Powers, Pryor, and the CIA agents are back home in the United States. Finally, after a secretive and stressful trip, the US government finally acknowledges the part he played in negotiating the arrangement and helps to fix his public image. As much as he may wish things were back to normal, that could never happen for him after something like this. Just a few years later, President Kennedy asked him to work with the government and take care of future negotiations. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.